Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the week of November 29th and you are watching the Ask Videomail. So first, a little bit of news. The site is going really well. I'm very happy with the amount of users that are using the content and seeing all the stuff that I have to offer. The forums are going very nicely. There's been a lot of great discussion again in the forums. I like to say that the forums are kind of a soft spot for me because there was really very little around when I was starting to learn animation. And I pretty much completely learned everything I knew technically about animation and about 3D and CG from a forum. And it was the really old school forum called 3D Cafe. I don't even think it's around anymore. And over the course of about 3 or 4 years, I amassed about 5,000 posts. So that was a very big part of my education, and I want to just encourage you guys, if you want to get the most out of the site, is to really participate in the forums, because there's going to be more and more content added, more and more videos and lectures and video mails, and being able to have an even playing field basically and discussing the same things with the other members is really going to build your understanding. They say that if you have to just listen to something, you learn it like 10%. If you have to write it down, you learn it like 20%. If you look at a picture or something like that, then you learn it even more. But the best way to learn something is to teach it. And that's definitely true for me. When I was starting at Animation Mentor, I really had very little vernacular. I had a very limited vocabulary on hand to describe the things that I do in animation for other people. So over the course of almost 6 years now, there's been just so many surprises along the way in that I've learned so much about my animation just from telling other people. So again, the forums is a fantastic way to just supplement your training, and I just encourage you to use those. Another piece of news, the referral program. I just turned on the referral program last week, and I'm running the Ultra Mega Referral Championship. What it is basically the person who refers the most people to the site who sign up gets a lifetime free membership to the site, meaning you will get put onto a free account that you never have to pay for and you will always have access to until the end of days. But there hasn't been one referral yet. So if somebody refers one user, you might be the person who wins the Ultra Referral Mega Championship, or the Mega Ultra. Doesn't matter, it's a championship and you can win it with one referral right now. So hopefully this gets you guys excited about the possibility that you can win this thing, and it would be a fantastic thing to have. So just tell your friends about the site, let them know what I'm doing and how much this site offers, and hopefully you maybe you win the contest and maybe you get to hang out here for free, which would be great. One lucky winner will win that, but the referral program is really great because you can earn unlimited free time here at the site. Every single user you refer that signs up, you get 30 days free. So you only need to find one person per month to have the entire site for free for the entire year. And there's no limit to the amount of referrals you can do. So basically, if you have enough friends and you get enough people to sign up, you can also basically win the championship as well. But I just wanted to encourage everybody because it's still well within your reach right now. So good luck on that, and thank you for bringing people to the site because I really appreciate it. So let's move on to the video mail. This week's question is, now I definitely find that the moment from going from step to spline is a big issue Very, very big issue. The number one thing that I see is that the moment that your stepped key represents is not clearly defined for you. In other words, you're not quite sure yourself if you know what that stepped key represents. So let me show you what I mean here. So we've got some step keys here, okay? And you're used to looking at these, right? And basically the way my animation works right now is he's in this pose, and then next frame he's in this pose, all right? So we've got a character basically, if I hit play, going from this kind of backwards pose to lean forward and kind of going, yeah, woohoo, something like that, okay. So the first problem that I normally run into is, here we have on frame 10 that pose changing. But what really does that stepped key represent? Is it the first key where a transition happens? Is it the key at which that pose is basically clearly defined? So it's like really the first frame of that pose being set? Is it a keyframe somewhere in the middle of that pose? Or is that the end of the pose? Okay, so there's a couple different places that it could define, but without knowing that in your mind beforehand, you might get in trouble. So let me use a really high-tech program called Paint to kind of illustrate my point here. Okay, so again, let's say we have two keyframes, and you're used to, with step mode, them going like this. And so what I was basically asking a second ago was, I'll do it with blue, if this is going to be splined eventually, okay. Oh yeah, another piece of news. Check it out. I have a room, a dedicated room in the office now just for the lectures and the video mail. So no more stressful setup and breakdown on my part, which is really cool because these are going to get, a lot better from here on out. Okay, but back to the work. So if this is going to be splined out, does this second keyframe represent the beginning of the transition? Okay, basically this point. Does it represent, let me do it in green. Does it represent the first frame that the pose is really hit? So basically the end of the transition? Does it represent, is this brown kind of color? Is it like a dark green? Does it represent a frame in the middle of the pose? And now let's use this color. Or is it the last frame of the transition? I'm sorry, the last frame of the pose. So here's why this is a big issue. When we're watching animation, let me play this at speed. When we're watching animation, what ends up happening is our eyes blend it together when we're watching step keyframes. Basically, what the result is a much smoother animation, a much smoother transition than you're actually seeing. And on top of that, and most importantly to this answer, is your brain will create will define what that pose is in terms of where it lies in that transition or in that held pose for you to make it make sense. Let me give you another example. Okay, I'm just going to save this real quick. Let's call this stepped. Okay. So you have a bouncing ball, right? Everyone's seen a bouncing ball. Everyone knows how to make a bouncing ball animation. Okay. All right, that's probably a little bit too spread out. Okay, so I'm just going to make these linear. Nice plateau on the top. Okay, so now we got something that's bouncing, right? So when we watch this bounce, again, because we're so used to seeing like objects that are being affected by gravity, that we know when it's not a correct arc, right? So if I key this in a couple places, okay, and then turn it to stepped, even though we're not actually seeing nearly any of the same keyframes that we're supposed to, our eye will blend this together and make it look like a much smoother bouncing ball than it actually is. So this is why we come across problems in the first place when we are going from stepped to spline. Okay? Excuse me. So, back to the other scene. So when we're watching this, our eye tricks us, and as an animator, we end up with a workflow that doesn't account for our eye tricking us, and therefore things get broken when we go to spline. So that's the first thing that you need to do. You need to define for yourself which one of these lines does that step key represent. For me, for my purposes, I like the green. Okay? I like if I have a pose, for that pose to be basically the end of the transition. Where's the beginning of the transition? That's part of the fix. Okay, so let's make that happen. So I'm going to take this character and I'm going to actually, as I'm working, define how long this hold is. I'm going to say it's a 6-frame hold. Let's do a 5-frame hold actually. Okay, so I'm just going to grab all the controls again. Actually, grab just the controls. There we go. Set a key. All right, now my default tangent type is not stepped right now. So I got to turn it to stepped. I got to keep on turning it to stepped. So please forgive me. Okay? So when we're looking at all of this, bear in mind that we need to do a little bit of defining that step key before we go to spline. And then no transition is right without a little bit of anticipation. So let's just anticipate it just a little bit. And notice what I'm doing is I'm creating a full body breakdown. What I try to encourage my students to do is to make sure that instead of making corrective fixes, that they're actually creating explicit, full body, accurate breakdowns that really enhance the transition rather than correct the transition. All right, so I'll show you what I mean in a second. Maybe a little bit of overshoot is necessary, meaning I can take this pose, copy it, maybe go 2 frames forward, make sure this is a step key, and then grab this pose and go just a little bit further. just like that. Okay. So all very, very, very quick and easy. Okay. And so now what we have when we watch it, we have what is a much more defined. Before, it might have looked in your eyes that he was going just like nice and smoothly. But I've defined a much snappier thing. He actually goes like, yeah, and really zips up there. Okay? When I spline this, okay, let's spline this, and I normally like to start at flat tangents because it is the most predictable. You can't really predict what doing smooth tangents is going to do in your animation, but you know that you have basically all slow ins and slow outs to deal with. That's a personal choice. You do not have to follow that to the letter by any means, okay? So now here's my splined animation, and as you can see, it's rather flat here in the beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that little moving hold trick that that I showed you a few weeks back. So we can see you actually would extend your legs rather than lift them up. The shoulders would drop a lot. Elbow would probably extend a little bit. Hands would probably stay in the same pose. This would fall down a lot. This would probably turn back, and these would probably turn back like this. Okay, so that was a really quick one. Remember what you do though. You set a key, and then middle mouse drag, and see what you get. See, that's a little bit too much. I'm going to do it one more time, and now we get even just a little bit. Actually, no, that's a little too much. So let's go take like halfway and copy it. Oops, still too much. Copy it again. There we go. So now we have just a little bit of moving hold, and here we go. Okay, so here's my animation now, and it didn't get destroyed when I went to spline. Now here's the wrong thing to do. Let me save this scene real quick. Okay, here's the wrong thing to do. Let me go back to this step scene. Taking all of these keys, and there's very little, okay? Going immediately to spline. And then correcting this. All right, what do I mean by correcting? Let's go to paint again. Okay. Don't need that. Okay, what I mean by correcting is if you have two keyframes, okay? Let's say this is like a ball, like the position of a ball. Okay? You go to spline, and it's going to put it right here. It's going to put it linearly, mechanically right in the middle. Now, our eye naturally buffs things down. It smooths things out and makes things less dramatic than if we really go with a mindset, I'm going to push this and make it strong. Okay? So when we look at this, okay, to move that into a position to make like a nice smooth arc, that correction will never be as dramatic and as pushed and as interesting, basically, when it comes down to it, as when you created, bing, yay, I love this. That looks wrong. When you created something that is way pushed, right? So here's what Maya will give you. Here's probably where your eye will move it and correct it out to make that breakdown, all right? But then look how much you're missing. You're missing all of this pushness. You're missing all of this dramatic arc, this really nice compositional element, whatever it is, broad gestures to subtle movements, it's all the same. You are much more likely to have a successful time if you define your breakdowns rather than create corrective breakdowns, okay? Like that, okay? So what we're seeing right here is, okay, well, you know what? He needs to anticipate. So I need to put some sort of breakdown in right here. And you already have all this motion on screen to deal with. So you're probably going to, bring him back and maybe, take his spine and bend him over and maybe counter animate this back. I don't know. Right? Now, does that look any good at all? No, it doesn't, because the correction to the broken animation, again, will never be as strong as the explicitly created, very, very, very thought through breakdown. Okay? So your anticipation and the little bit of overshoot that I did on that end pose, not to mention thinking ahead. Let me bring it back up again. Thinking ahead with that stepped key, what it actually represents, and creating this moving hold, this 5-frame hold, which very clearly defines how long that transition is. So let's look again. Obviously this is much stronger, and this is going to be closer to what I saw in my head when I was creating that stepped key. So I know this was a long Ask Video Mail. I don't think I'm going to get too many complaints normally. Everyone's very happy to watch a long video. But that is how you manage the transition from step to spline. It's just by keeping those things in mind. Just to recap very quickly, define where that step key actually exists in your final animation. Okay? And number 2, build in your breakdowns explicitly. Make sure that you are defining those breakdowns rather than going back in and making up for kind of the screw ups that Maya is always going to give you. Okay? Well, that will do it. Please, please, please send all your questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. Make a subject line, Ask Video Mail, if you could, so I can get them all in the same place. Or you can use the contact form that is on the site. I love getting the Ask Video Mail questions. I get so excited when I get a new one in. There is very little of them. And if you have a problem with animation right now, it's a very good chance that you're going to see a specific video like this one catered to your exact question. So how exciting would that be to get a little bit of specific training? I think very exciting, right? So please, again, send your questions in. I love answering them. This is a blast so far. I'm having a great time with this site, and I hope you guys are too. All right? Don't forget to refer your friends. Good luck with the animation, and as always, rock on.